If foreclosures are going to lead us into a housing market crash in California, like all these YouTubers are talking about, when is it going to happen? We're going to walk you through a timeline to show you exactly the soonest the wave can start. Hit that like button if you want to know the truth. Hey there, Christian Walsh, Coldwell Banker Wire Associates. We specialize in helping tenants and landlords, buyers and sellers like you in lovely California, and we are here with an important topic, one that's got us a little bit fired up. Sorry about that. I'll try and calm down. And so many YouTubers and outside of YouTube, people talking about a foreclosure wave and the housing market's going to crash. And I'm getting fired up because I'm seeing stuff that's just plain not true. People who should know better doing videos showing the current level of foreclosures, which have nothing to do with the coming level. This drives me crazy. So I'm here to set the record straight to let you know when we can expect those foreclosures to come, and whether or not it'll crash the market, we will wait and see. But the first step is to know actually when they could potentially come. So another thing to share about me, I have been a licensed broker for over a dozen years, and I came up through the last bust. My business got started when the market was falling apart. So I've dealt with short sales from both sides. I've listed bank-owned homes. I've helped investors buy on the steps of the courthouse a few properties. I've researched this. I did everything I could to understand this process back during the previous bust, and I've continued to keep up to date on this. So I'm going to give you the straight truth to let you know when we can expect the foreclosures to start coming at the absolute earliest. So here's your primer on the California foreclosure process, and pay attention because things have changed since the bust. So an important first point, California is a non-judicial foreclosure state, which is a much quicker process than a judicial foreclosure state, where you must go in front of a judge for the actual foreclosure. So in California, it is structured such that the trustee working on behalf of the beneficiary, the lender, can initiate the foreclosure process if the borrower misses a payment. So moving forward, so let's go ahead and give you the breakdown on the timing of this. Used to be 90-90-21, now it's 120-90-21, and I'll explain what that means. So the very first thing that initiates the whole process is the borrower misses a payment. So from there, usually they try and work it out. There's going to be a late fee, but as this goes on, we start to move into the foreclosure process potentially. So the federal regulations related to servicing state now is that in the state of California, once 120 days have passed since that missed payment, that is when the notice of default can be filed. They must first make sure they do a foreclosure avoidance assessment. So 30 days before filing the notice of default, the lender is supposed to reach out and try to work with the borrower. It makes sense. If that doesn't work, 30 days after that, that is when the notice of default will be filed. It will be no less than 120 days from the missing of the payment. So after the notice of default is filed, there are 90 days before the notice of trustee sale can be filed. Now the buyer can still bring things whole and still prevent foreclosure, but the clock is ticking. So 90 days after the notice of default, the notice of trustee sale is filed. Then there's 21 days until the auction. So that's where we get 120, 90, 21. All right, so auction day arrives, and it's literally at the courthouse steps, or it could be online. And what'll happen is a group of people will show up, and they'll be there with a big fat stack of cashier's checks, probably gonna buy a bunch of properties like they do. And they are there to pay all cash for any of the properties that are actually go through the sale and are foreclosed on. So the properties aren't foreclosed until they go through the auction process. Now, that schedule was often pushed back in the previous bust, and it could be any number of reasons. The borrower filed bankruptcy, somebody didn't sign something correctly when it was delivered, suddenly the borrower decided to go forward with a short sale or a loan mod. So those sales were often pushed for any number of reasons. So while there could have been 100, 150 properties on the list, it could winnow down to 75 or less. So that was something that had happened very commonly. Okay, so once the bidding starts, the price is set at really whatever the lender wants to set it at. Usually the minimum was the mortgage outstanding balance, any late fees, attorney fees, foreclosure fees. Usually that was the minimum, but the lender could set it lower. And the lender, the beneficiary, the Bene, could also bid at the auction through the trustee. So they start bidding, and if nobody bids or the Bene wins and outbids everybody else, the home goes back to the Bene. So there's two things that could happen. One is it sells, or two is it goes back to the Bene. If it sells, whoever bought it at the sale is usually an investor who's going to fix it and flip it, or fix it and rent it out. If it goes back to the Bene, then there's another process where this house now goes. So it goes back to the Bene. What happens next? So there will be an agent, a real estate agent usually, assigned to this home, and they're going to be managing the process to get that home empty, clean, and fixed up to the market and sold. So this assignment to an agent process can take a few days if people knew it was coming, knew the asset was coming. That happened with a very large asset that I listed. Or it can take weeks or months where it just kind of languishes because there's a big backlog of properties. So eventually the agent is assigned, and it's up to the agent to go figure out what's going on at the property. So if they get there and it's vacant, you go inside, it's clean, maybe a few repairs, maybe a few odds and ends, that would be the quickest turnaround for a property. The agent can get the pictures, get the approval from the bank after doing the broker price opinion, the BPO, get an idea of the price, get it on the market, and get it sold. Now, if there's someone in it, the agent has to figure out, is it the former owner? Is it a tenant? If it's a tenant, do they have a lease? That is a completely different process. It can involve cash for keys, where they give money to the occupant. If there's a lease in place, that lease has to be honored. So that's a very different process. Typically, about the shortest you could do it would be about 30 days. If there's a lease, you'd have to honor that whole lease, but anywhere from 30, 90, 120 days now is what it'll take to get those folks out of that house. So here we are to go through the timeline. I know you're excited about this. We're going to show you the absolute earliest that realistically we can see foreclosure starting. So there's some assumptions here. This would be people who did not take advantage of forbearance, the 180 days of forbearance, even if you started April 1st, which is about the earliest you would have started, the first payment due during the pandemic, that would put you into October 1st. So this is not somebody who took advantage of forbearance. Servicers were required to wait until August 31st to start the process. And this is slightly different from what private lenders do. Private lenders aren't necessarily governed by the national federal servicing guidelines for Fannie and Freddie and federally backed mortgages. So just know they could have started sooner, but that's not a wave. Private lenders are a very small fraction of the market. So some other things to bear in mind, this is without any additional forbearance from the government, whether it's at the federal level or the state level. This is not somebody who's going through a loan mod or trying to do a short sale, because we can't have dual tracking. The foreclosure process cannot start if you're in the process of getting a loan modification or you're in the process of doing a short sale. So it can't dual track. All right, so here we go. So this is super excited bank. They cannot wait to foreclose on the people who are behind. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna skip their 120 days, and they're gonna go ahead right on the 31st. They're gonna deliver that notice of default. I cannot believe how excited they are, but that's what they do. So you get your notice of default delivered the 31st. So there's a 90-day wait until you can do the notice of trustee sale. So 90 days puts us at 11/29, which happens to be a Saturday, so it gets pushed to Monday, and that is our notice of trustee sale. So that is the next important date in the timeline. So now we're into December. This is the absolute earliest that this process could take place. So now we have to wait another 21 days after the notice of trustee sale. So 21 days goes by before the auction can actually happen. So that puts us at 12/22, which is a Tuesday just before Christmas. What a great time to go ahead and be foreclosing on a home. So let's say the auction goes through, it goes back to the Bene, and realistically, because of the time of year, because of all the madness, it's going to be the first week of January 2021 before we could even begin to see foreclosures coming to the market in California. Now, this could be pushed, obviously, like we talked about. If they have to wait the 120 days in order to deliver the notice of default, or if there's another forbearance plan that comes, or if somebody is in a forbearance plan that goes to a year, everything gets pushed. The soonest we can start to see foreclosures for federally backed mortgages is January 2021, most likely being pushed deeper into 2021. So that is your date. We know foreclosures are coming, and now you have a realistic timeline. Now you know it's going to be at least January 2021, and that's with all cylinders firing. It's going to be pushing further into 2021 at this point in time. There will be other programs that could slow this process down and maybe help people keep their homes. This has been Christian Walsh, Coldwell Banker Wire Associates. I really appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and subscribe to our email newsletter. We keep content coming like this. I appreciate you. Thank you.